Hey, have your attention, please. We're ready to get started. Good evening and welcome to the Union County Public Schools Facilities Committee meeting. I'm Kevin Stewart, Chairman. Glad to see a big turnout here tonight. I would ask that you silence your telephone or devices while you're here to limit the services. Also, for those that have iPads or smartphones or whatever, if you want to be able to look these maps up close, we're going to go live with them. They should be live now. I'm going to let Dr. Williams tell you how you can access them on the website if you want to pull them up there to see us.
If you would, you just go to the Union County Public Schools webpage, click on redistricting, reassignment. Can you hear me now? Yeah. All right. Go to Union County Public Schools webpage. Go to reassignment. This is UCPS.K12.NC.US.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we'll get started. Before we do begin, I would like to remind you this is a committee meeting. There will be no opportunity for public comment here tonight. However, there will be public hearings and meetings with opportunities for members of the public to speak at a later date. We request that you be respectful of the process and not make any disrupting noises, such as stomping your feet, booing, anything like that. This is the only warning that will be given, and basically anyone that does cause a disturbance will be removed by law enforcement. So just want to make that crystal clear. We expect this to go in a very respectful manner tonight. Hope everybody will cooperate with that. Also, I want to make a couple of comments as chair of the facilities committee before we start. I know there's been a lot of public discussion about the timing and how this has been handled. Some folks say we're going too fast with it. But actually, this is the first time in redistricting this has ever been channeled through the facilities committee. We did that purposely to slow the process down, to better vet the process, and have more eyes looking at this, and like I say, slow it down rather than the staff coming to a meeting, throwing it out, and then basically a public hearing and voting on it. We try to draw the process out so you have a chance to look at it, see it, and digest it. All options are still in play. I mean, redistricting is part of the process. Construction redistricting is another part of the process. Construction and consideration of intermediate schools, that's always been on the table. As far as multi-tracking and year-round and even additional capping and busing. So nothing is set in stone now. This is still a fluid process. One thing that I really want to point out that's resonated with me is there's been a lot of vilification of some schools in the system in this process. Some folks say there's no malice intended, but, you know, I really don't think that any schools down in our system helps anybody. And I challenge each and every one of you to think of the message you're sending to our children when you employ these type tactics. If you would, I'd like to see that stop. There's no need for that, no part for that in this process. Okay, that's basically the ground rules. We'll go ahead and get started. We've got one item to dispose on before we go into the maps. That's basically a Stallings Elementary School easement request. I'll turn it over to Don Hughes.
Yes, back in May of last year and again in September, the town of Stallings came to the facilities committee asking for an easement for a sidewalk that they're going to be installing on a couple of roads at Stallings Elementary. And at the time, Union County owned the property, the Board of Education did not, so staff directed me to work with the county people, Charlie O'Kane of Public Works, and the town of Stallings, and work out the details. And the county would handle turning it over. Well, subsequently, the county has now turned the property over to us, so now we need to approve through the Board of Education to give them the easement for Stallings sidewalk. The map you have just shows the area in front of our school on Stallings Road portion. The easement size varies depending upon where it is, and it has no effect on the school at all. It puts a sidewalk in front of it. In fact, to the north of the first driveway entrance, they're going to be fixing a slight drainage problem that we've had to work on, and they're going to fix it when they put it in the sidewalk. So the staff recommends that we approve this. It's a no dollar exchange since it's a county government, just Board of Education of the town of Stallings.
What's the pleasure of the committee? I make a motion to approve this. Have a motion and second discussion. Being none, I'll call the question. All in favor? That one is approved and will be forwarded to the Board of Education at their next meeting for full consideration. Okay, item number 2, student reassignment maps. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Webb.
Good evening, Facilities Committee, yes, principals as well. I'd like to start first with the Marvin Ridge cluster that was on our agenda. We will stay in order of our map index. So if you would, in your packet, if you would pull out the map and the subdivisions associated with the Marvin Ridge cluster that. Let's start first with the secondary schools. Okay, the way that we have structured the maps for reference, everything that is in white is the current Marvin Ridge attendance lines. Again, everything in white is the current Marvin Ridge attendance line. The blue line now defines staff's proposal for Marvin Ridge new attendance structure. So there are 2 areas that would be carved out. Now, because of the density of some of these neighborhoods, instead of us placing those developments and so forth on this map, we were afraid some get overlaid on some and just couldn't read them. We've created a separate sheet at which you can track the subdivisions impacted, where they're moving to, as well as the mileage from their current school to the new school assignment. Let's break this down now to our elementary schools. Sandy Ridge attendance sum, same structure, current is in white. Same 2 sections being carved out. The next school impacted in the Marvin Ridge cluster is Marvin Elementary School. There is a section for Marvin Ridge being reassigned in the staff's proposal as well. Mr. Hughes, if you would pull up the subdivisions impacted, and please keep in mind we put the major subdivisions here that there's a road, a home along the road, as long as we don't have to pull their address and look to see where they are inside that attendance line. Correct. The mileage, you may be questioning how we arrived at the mileage, looking at Barrington from Sandy Ridge Elementary School, it's from the front entrance of the development to the entrance of the school. And we use Google Maps for that. So just point to point. So if you look at Sandy Ridge, the subdivisions impacted for the Marvin Ridge cluster at all of those schools that we've discussed, Sandy Ridge Elementary and Marvin Ridge Elementary and Marvin Ridge Middle School and High School, you will see the development. You will see the current mileage from that development to their home school, current school, and you will see the proposed school and the mileage from that entrance of the development to the entrance of the school. Again, the example was Barrington. Any questions with the Marvin Ridge cluster data? The next will be how the impact of this proposal. If you look at the before forecast, you had Sandy Ridge in the watch area up as high as 932 in the forecast. Then Marvin Ridge Middle School in the cap area is currently capped and would remain in the cap. Marvin Ridge High School would reach watch status in 2015-16 and move into the cap in 16-17. The proposals for the Marvin Ridge cluster, the after reassignment, no school after this school year enters into the watch area or the capping area. Any questions? We'll move from the Marvin Ridge cluster to the Cuthbertson cluster. Also, we're placing hard copies of the maps in the main hallway. So you'll be able to see their larger size maps for you, in case you cannot see them from the back. The Cuthbertson cluster. Go to the secondary. Again, the area in white represents Cuthbertson's current attendance zone. You can see that we have carved two areas out of the Cuthbertson current attendance zone. A lot of that's due to the density of the growth in those areas. The elementary schools that we are looking at, we'll start with, go ahead and move into the Cuthbertson Elementary. Kensington Elementary first. You can see the impact on Kensington. The school is currently capped at this time. Would be an area of Kensington that would move into the Waxhaw Elementary School and an area that would move into Newtown. You can now begin to see the domino effect starting. We move from Marvin to Cuthbertson, from Cuthbertson, which now will push into the Parkwood and even part of the current Cuthbertson Elementary School. Newtown. You can see the red line denotes the new attendance line for Newtown Elementary. Part of Newtown, again, the domino effect moves an area to Western Union. Cuthbertson Middle School and high school we shared with you on that first secondary map, so you've seen that impact. Let's look at the forecast data and the impact of the movement of students. Okay. We can see the overcapacity at Kensington where we're capped. Cuthbertson would move into a cap situation in 14-15. Cuthbertson High School would move into watch area in 15-16 and cap in 16-17. The reassignment plan leaves 3 schools in the watch area. Kensington is now with the cap below 1,000 students, and we would not even be in the watch area for the elementary, middle, or high in that cluster. Let's look at the subdivisions impacted and the distance from the current school to the proposed school. Well, it's on that reassignment. if you go back and see if you can answer her question.
Mr. Jackson's coming back to see if he can help you locate it, ma'am. If you'll raise your hand so he'll know where you are. Thank you.
Again, we didn't change anything. Google Map from subdivision entrance to the school entrance and the mileage. Again, I remind you, these will be posted in the lobby, larger maps for the subdivisions as well. Wellington clusters.
Folks, if you would, please hold it down so we can continue on. And one thing, folks, once your cluster is presented, you have that information, there are a lot of folks still apparently waiting to get in later tonight. I don't know if you want to stay for the whole process. Any seats that may become available would be appreciated, I'm sure.
Again, if you're leaving and you'd like to check the maps, they're posted in the main hallway here. You're welcome to give me that center.
Ladies and gentlemen, the fire marshal said that only 100 at a time will be allowed in the hallway, so if you'll cooperate with it, I'm sure you'd appreciate it.
The website that has the developments is called Cluster Distance. Look at the Cluster Distance page, and that has the developments and the distance.
You can also exit to the left of the stage down front. But if you want to get out any quicker, you can exit to the left or the rear exit. There's an exit out the back as well. Ladies and gentlemen, also there was a question. If your subdivision is not listed on that secondary sheet, you will not be affected by redistricting. By this proposal, excuse me, by this particular proposal. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll come back to order again. We'll get started back.
hurry.
Dr. Bennett.
Mr. Chair, the next cluster we'll discuss will be the Weddington cluster.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you will, please hold it down so everybody can hear. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I did have a question that might help someone ask if their development, for whatever reason, their development is not on the list, then they were not impacted. They remain at their current school.
Okay, everybody did get that, right? If your subdivision is not listed on the subdivision worksheets, you are not currently impacted by the proposed maps.
Weddington Secondary Schools, again, you can see in the white the current attendance zone. The blue line now defines it. Weddington will pick up an area here and here from the Tupperton area, and will lose this area to Sun Valley Cluster. We'll look at the elementary schools, starting with Antioch Elementary School. Antioch's current attendance zone, the red now defines it. So it will pick up an area here, and we'll lose this area to Indian Trail. Weddington Elementary School. You can see Weddington, again, in the white original attendance zone. Weddington Elementary. The red now defines it. It will pick up an area right here. It will pick up this area. It will lose to Newtown here. This section will move to Antioch. Then we'll pick up this area here. Western Chapel Elementary School. White, current Western Chapel attendance area. It will pick up section here. We'll lose. And we'll lose this part over to the Rocky River. Western Chapel will become a feeder to the Sun Valley cluster. And we have already discussed the middle school and high school. Let's look at the subdevelopment for the mileage sheet. Subdivisions impacted, current schools, mileage, proposed school, and the difference in mileage. Don, if you go to the cluster data forecast sheet. You can see that we have Weddington Middle School that's in the watch area. In 15-16, it enters into the cap area. Forecast moves Weddington High School into the watch area in 17-18 and cap in 18-19. Addressing this, after the reassignment, proposed reassignment, Weddington Middle School moves into the watch area at 11:52. Still gives you almost 100 children before you would hit the capping area. 11:73, you still do not reach the capping area, so you would not be in a capping situation within the Weddington cluster capping. Sun Valley cluster is next. Don, if you would please pull the secondary schools up first for Sun Valley.
Excuse me just a minute. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to come, go up the center aisle. There's some additional seats back in the back there. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we'll get started back. This is to remind everybody we have covered Marvin, Weddington, and Cumberland clusters. And also, I'm going to have Dr. Webb point out again, if you have smartphones or devices, please silence them. But I'm going to have Dr. Webb point out a web link where you can pull these maps up live on your device if you want to see it there at your seat. Dr. Webb?
These are on the UCPS webpage. Just go to Union County Public Schools and ucps.k12.nc.us as a URL. For those that just came in, we have discussed the following clusters: Marvin Ridge, Hupperson, Weddington. We're getting ready to discuss the Sun Valley clusters. The clusters that we have discussed are posted in the main lobby as well as online. Now let's move to the secondary schools within the Sun Valley cluster. Looking at the secondary school assignments for Sun Valley.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll hold it down, please, we'll get started back.
Again, methodology still the same. Everything in the white represents Sun Valley's current cluster. The blue line now redefines this new attendance pattern. As you can see, there will be an area that will move into the Porter Ridge cluster. Second area here that will move into the Monroe cluster. And Sun Valley will be picking up this area here. That is the Western Chapel area. The elementary schools, Indian Trail Elementary School. White current boundaries. Red now defines it. Indian Trail will pick up an area here. We'll lose a section here. And we'll lose this area. Rocky River Elementary School. Current attendance zone. Defined in red. You can see that Rocky River will pick up an area here. Shiloh Elementary School. I'm sorry, Sun Valley Elementary School.
Excuse me just a second, Dr. Webb. Dr. Webb, can you go back to the Rocky River? Where did you, I'm trying to keep up with where you were visiting and where you were.
Rocky River in the white current attendance area.
Okay.
The red now will define Rocky River attendance. So it picks up an area here, and we'll pick up this area here.
I just missed that part of what you're supposed to come back.
I might have missed it myself. I hope I didn't. Sun Valley Elementary School. Sun Valley Elementary School, current attendance will now be defined in the red here, so it will pick up this area. There is no map for Shiloh. Shiloh was not impacted anyway. We discussed Sun Valley Middle School and Sun Valley High School as part of the secondary maps. If you would, let's look at the distance and the impacted subdivisions. Same process. Looking at the forecast sheet, Sun Valley High School will move into the watch area, but then drops back down to the lower edges of that. Other than that, no one enters into the watch area. Moving to the Porter Ridge cluster. Secondary map.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you would, please hold your conversations down to a minimum so everybody can hear, please.
What defines Porter Ridge today? The blue line, the proposed attendance zone. I'm sorry. Porter Ridge would lose this section into the Piedmont cluster and would gain this area from the Sun Valley cluster. The elementary schools within the Porter Ridge cluster. Porter Ridge Elementary School. Current attendance. Proposed loses this area here. Subdivisions impacted in this proposal. Oh, I'm sorry, Stallings Elementary. White Stallings current. Attendance zone. It loses this area to Fairview Elementary. Again, Don, you scroll through the subdivisions. Piedmont cluster, I'm sorry, the Porter Ridge forecast sheet. You have Porter Ridge Middle School currently in a capping situation. In 15-16, it does drop to a watch area. Porter Ridge High School moves into a capping area. It moves into the watch area next year. The proposed reassignment plan drops into Porter Ridge in the cap, moves them out of the cap next year, and moves them to the low level in years 15-16 and 18-19. The cap, the watch area is 1,300, and they're 13-10, 13-15. The highest watch area is 13-7. Porter Ridge High School moves into the watch area. That brings us to the Piedmont cluster.
Will you be discussing the other options after the redistricting option is discussed?
I'm sorry, we can't allow questions or comments right now in the public per se.
After the meeting, I think anyone who wanted to speak with the board member or staff could do so. Is that correct, Mr. Stewart?
Yeah, that's what I'm going to suggest, that We'll be available after the meeting, after we adjourn this committee. If you have questions, we'll be glad to answer them for you at that time. And also, we'll meet again at the full board for a work session on the 23rd.
On the 3rd, and that's going to be at Monroe High School in the auditorium.
Yep.
Piedmont High School's current boundaries in white. This is the area that domino effect from the Porter Ridge into Piedmont here. Piedmont will pick that area up. Piedmont will lose this area here into the Monroe cluster, and this area here into the Forest Hills cluster. Elementary schools. Unionville's current, and the area they lose here, and that goes for Rock Rest Elementary. Next one. Okay. Fairview, the question about Dr. Ellis is Fairview Elementary School. Fairview did not lose any students. They gained that one section from Porter Ridge, so there is no map for that. And the same thing for New Salem. If there's no kids being moved from that, there's no map, so there's no change. That brings us to the subdivisions. Look at the forecast. We can see we have Unionville that would enter into the watch area in 2015-16. After reassignment, Piedmont High School would enter into the watch area, peaking at 1491, and the cap is at 1530. Monroe cluster. White defines Monroe's cluster as it stands today. Blue line would now define Monroe. As you can see, it picks up the area here from Piedmont, picks this area up from Sun Valley, loses this area to Forest Hills. And here. Elementary schools. Current. Red line defining the new. This area would be assigned to Rock Rest. Current, Walter Pickett, defined in red. Loses an area here for rock rest. And this area here into the Rocky River area. Next, subdivisions impacted and the mileage. The last would be Hartwood Middle School and High School, the secondary. So I need to do the cluster forecast. As you can see, 2 in the watch area in 16, 17 would be Walter Bishop. Joining them in the watch area in 17, 18 would be Rockhurst Elementary School. As you look here, we still enter into the watch areas here. And Monroe High School enters into a watch area. Now, you asked, why are we heavier in a watch area here? You could reduce this area. But to reduce this area, you have to start with more kids. At front, if you ask us to not impact as many children, you have to push more from that western end and further into the Forest Hills cluster, for the Monroe cluster. The last is Parkwood Middle School and High School. Only schools impacted are the middle school and high school in Parkwood cluster. You can see the current and this area here. We move into the Forest Hills area. Forecast sheet. Don't need that. It impacted 2 students. So. One middle and one high school student in that area. Mr. Chair, I would point out this proposal would reduce the number of current split feeder schools to 3. Split feeder schools at that time would be Rocky River Elementary, Rock Rest Elementary, and Porter Ridge Elementary. And that concludes the map presentation. Take any questions at this time.
Questions from the committee? I've got a question. Mr. Chair, I'd like, as we go through this process, I would like you to, as a facility committee, direct staff to look at grandfathering in the 11th, rising 11th graders in this, and I'd like to work on that.
That is certainly very doable, and we will attend that task and have numbers ready for the full board meeting on January 23rd.
Any further discussion on the maps presented?
I want to make sure I understood that. You're talking about rising, current 10th graders will be rising juniors, and current 11th graders will rising seniors.
We're grandfathering in the rising 12th graders currently with this. I'd like to show the impact of the rising 11th graders so that we would be able to grandfather in our rising 11th and our rising 12th graders.
We will have numbers for you at that point in time, and we'll also, and I'm looking at Mr. Jeffries, we will also be able to talk about bus costs and that kind of thing. He's giving a thumbs up, yes, sir.
Okay, if there's no further discussion of the maps, is the consensus of the committee to forward these on to the full board for consideration?
Yes, that's a consensus.
Okay, we'll forward these maps on to the full board for their work session on the 23rd, and also take into consideration the adjusting these figures to include grandfather and rising juniors as well as seniors.
Mr. Chair, may I inform the committee of something? Staff has been hard at work looking at not only, you gave us the task of filling the empty seats. We've been looking at that. We're also going to bring to the full board what would happen if we capped and continue capping, what would happen if we put modular units in, what would happen if it were brick and mortar, what would happen if we ran a tracking where children are on 3 weeks and off 1, that kind of thing. We're looking at every possibility to bring to the board for your perusal, so you guys can have all the facts prior to making a decision. And we will have that ready for the full board if I can get it on the agenda, and I believe I can, on the 23rd.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent Ellis. Any further comments or questions from the staff? Anything else for the committee? Okay, before we adjourn, one of our members received a little troubling information while we were here tonight. I personally would like to ask you all to keep the family and loved ones of a United States Marine, young Marine who was killed in a training accident tonight with thought prayers. The young man was putting it on the line for us to be here and for us to all enjoy ourselves as Americans. So keep that family in thoughts and prayers, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure we appreciate it. I entertain a motion for adjournment.
It was my youngest son's best friend. He was killed in a training accident. He's in his second phase of training with the Marines. I know no more than that. But it's not going down well with our family. I'm sorry.
Please keep them in your thoughts and prayers, ladies and gentlemen. Please remember these folks in the time of need. Make a motion to adjourn. Motion second, all in favor? Aye. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.